Answers push. Okay. Pushing, insertion. It's very yang. Questions pull. It's very yin. And by
Mhm.
striving to not have the answer, again, Taoism, by striving to not have answers, we create answers.
Mhm.
By striving to not have answers, we gift our clients with their own answers. What's more Taoist than that?
Yeah.
Welcome to the Beauty Seed.
Get it?
I am super stoked to have my mentor, guide, friend, burgeoning relationship through the work of digging into ourselves so that we can know our own relationship with the external world. My great pleasure and honor to welcome Mark England to the Beauty Seed. Welcome to the Beauty Seed. Let's plant some stuff and see what grows.
See what happens, man. See what we can do with our
Love,
words. Thanks for having me, Abe. Thanks for
yeah,
listening,
love
everybody.
it, buddy. And I think I'd like to, well, I'll take out the think. I know I'd like to start with a basic for those who aren't familiar with the Enlifted method. What is the Enlifted method? How'd you get here, buddy?
At first, the lifted method's a crowbar, and then it's a paintbrush. Um, yeah, Enlifted is, it depends on who we're talking to. The outer layer of the onion, it's a set of coaching tools. A few layers in, it's communications tools. Very
Mhm.
simple, you know. And then at the very core of the thing, we teach two things: awareness and creation. Awareness about our words
Mhm.
and what we're creating as a byproduct of using them the way that we do. Um, which you can file all of it under stuff you didn't learn in high school English class, for damn sure. I know, because I came up in the public school system and I've
Yeah.
got a master's degree in education, and nobody's talking about the abracadabra in.
With my words, I create.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
more like, um with your
Hey,
words, go research Christopher Columbus and give me a 2-page report,
yeah,
and make sure you
yeah,
get your past participles right.
yeah. Yeah, so in my looking into the things I do, it's substance over form. You have the form is that paper that you write. The substance is where do these words come from? What brings that quality that feeds the need to express it to others, right? And
That's a
so yeah.
that right there. um what brings this to form? What's the impetus for us learning language and sharing it with others? That's a very interesting question, and an unanswerable question as far as I'm concerned.
Uh-huh.
At my pay grade, just coming from me, I would assume other people have answers. I don't have answers. um
Hey,
I have
Mark,
observations.
how do you feel about answers?
uh well, depends, if I'm taking my truck in, which it's got a leak, I just saw it yesterday. I do want answers to that.
Mhm.
Okay, I want some answers. Or if someone is helping me fix my back squat, I want answers to why my mechanics are off. When it comes to helping someone create space and clarity with when it comes to their mindset, the story that they're telling themselves, it's far more powerful to have questions. Questions lead people to finding their own answers as opposed to telling them what I think. Um, I have observations. I have observations about why we're so compelled to use words. And it's a thousand. It's as instinctual as walking, learning to walk. Babies don't think to learn to start, okay, time to pick my head up and start strengthening my neck. And then after I get that, then I'm going to get on all fours and crawl around. And eventually I'll be able to stand up, but I won't be able to walk. I'll stand up and fall down. And I'll do that a couple hundred times. And all these big adults will, give me, clap and yay. And then eventually I'll be able to walk and, give me 3 or 4 years. And then I'll be able to run. And by the time I'm 10, I'll be able to sprint. But
Yeah.
babies don't know what they're doing when they're learning to walk. And babies also don't know what they're doing when they're connecting dots between the sounds that these big people are making. So learning language is as instinctual as learning to walk. We're going to do it. It's as hard baked as anything into our DNA. It's as hard baked as our heartbeat. It must happen. It must happen. I must learn to walk. I must learn the sounds.
Yeah. How does the mechanics, I mean, so there's this crossover. How do you use the mechanics of language, which seems to be a major function and factor in our language games, to as an inroad to looking deeper into that substance? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. The point with the language games that we play, and we've got a lot at Enlifted, and they're very simple. It's to get people thinking about their thinking. So that's the big picture. Let's help people slow down this thing, their story, so they can pay closer attention to what words they're using. And then from there, how what words they're using are influencing them for better and for worse. So it kicks off a massive exploration
Mhm.
of self-inquiry. And I don't know what the the most if God came down and said the most powerful awareness practice is to think about your thinking, is to pay attention to your words, is to stare at them, is to observe them. To observe your story is to observe yourself. Because I mean, what is Mark England? Mark England is a story.
Mhm.
That's what it
And
is.
yeah, and where are your words coming from? Where's your story? In your head, largely.
In my head, and from there, I mean, are they coming from somewhere else before they show up in my head? Maybe. I don't know, man. I really don't.
Mhm.
The study of the metaphysics of language is the study of symbols. It's the study of the imagination. I mean, what is the imagination? It's the study of sound. It's the study of frequency, cymatics. That's pretty interesting. Looking into that.
Sure
Um,
is.
uh, uh, it's the study of epigenetics. It's
Hmm.
it. I. You can go in any direction, and the more you know, the more you learn, the more questions you'll have, the more weird
Yeah.
esoteric questions you'll get.
Yeah.
And
Well, I have a
I'm satisfied not knowing. That's the thing. I'm very
yeah,
satisfied
yeah.
not knowing.
I had a question from a friend who's kind of analogous to Adam Chin, who is your co-founder of Enlifted, correct? And Jason was curious. So you have narrative therapy. Are you familiar with narrative therapy?
No, I can guess by the name. It's,
Yeah.
hopefully it's therapeutic for someone's story.
Yeah. So it is that. And I was if you had found a background in knowing about it, it's essentially digging into your own story and reframing it. And I was curious if you could differentiate what Enlifted does with normal therapies and why it lands so much better in that sense of being practical. I think there's a practical essence to Enlifted that really lands for me and for those I work with in it.
In Lifted is the main point is observing our story and then learning how to make the kind of changes to it that we want.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a lot of different kinds of therapies out there. What I can say is if someone comes in and tells the same stories in the same way over and over and over again, then they're paying to get worse, or they're paying to get better at being a victim of circumstance, or whatever the problem, the essence of the problem is. Also known as you're getting reps in.
Mhm.
You're getting reps in of telling that woe is me story. Um, and there's certain types of therapy that's what they do. They just, oh, let's talk about this again, and they'll have answers. Okay, well, you're enmeshed with your mother, and you've got trauma from your father not being there in the way that you wanted as a kid. Okay, great, thanks. Now what? Oh well, now you now have a label for it. Fantastic. Now what?
Mhm.
In my opinion, and there's a time and a place for meds, and most people that are get put on meds, the person putting them on meds doesn't have an off ramp for it.
Mhm.
It's just
Yeah.
this thing that's going to keep going. I don't I under certain circumstances, yeah, maybe, okay, cool. Um, most problems when it comes to someone's mindset, their story, their emotional status, their feelings, you can pick up a pen and write the thing out and do some really cool stuff to the story. Amazing. No meds necessary. Okay. It, you know, instead of telling someone that they have some kind of label, how about we just get that story that you keep repeating over and over and over in your head and stop it dead in its tracks and see what happens and unlock your breath so you can get that real boo-hoo out of there.
Yeah. Do you have an instance that is profound for you that where you witnessed that either in yourself
Shitloads.
or somebody else? I gathered.
Yeah.
What's coming to
Shitloads.
whichever one's coming up.
Um, there's so many, it's hard for me to pinpoint because I've been doing this for
Mhm.
so long. I've been doing this
Mhm.
one thing for 18 years, and then it hockey sticked 5.5 years ago when we started certifying coaches, and now because there's only one of me, and now we've got 460 enlifted level 1 coaches going out and using this stuff to different degrees and frequency. Um, but it's the same thing over and over again. Stories kept in the head are it's a horror movie that keeps on playing, and that's what a story kept in the head will do. It's not about intelligence or deserving things, or um or how bad you want to stop feeling like shit. I don't care how much someone is over feeling horrible about something. If they keep playing the story in their
Mhm.
head in the same way that it is. So that's the thing with back to therapy real quick.
Yeah.
Hopefully a good therapist or a good psychiatrist or a good psychologist will help make changes to the story. That's the point. Your client needs to walk out the door with a different story than when they walked in. Otherwise, you just got paid to help them get worse.
Mhm.
And yeah, so the point of Enlifted is about becoming aware of the words, the stories, and being able to do something about it. That's half the problem with the victim mentality, is thinking that there's nothing we can do about these stories that have annoyed us or hurt us or haunted us for God knows how long. And it's pretty easy to deal with that stuff when you know how, and someone's got a good why. And most people do have a good why. And that good why is their quality of their life, because the clock is ticking. I made a post in Mighty Networks about victim mentality pyramid, atelophobia, socophobia, and then imposter syndrome on top. Atelophobia, everybody, I sound smart, don't I?
Yeah.
Is the fear of not being good enough, and then socophobia is the fear of being seen. And so anyway, and so Rod Stewart, he wrote in there, yeah, I've been talking to my clients about immortality syndrome, and I was like, holy shit, yeah, that's great. So thinking immortality syndrome, thinking that I'm going to live forever. You're not going to live forever. I'm not going to live forever. Abe ain't. Everybody listening to this isn't. The clock's ticking. That's a good why.
Mhm.
That's a real good why right there. Okay, well, I'll just reference the 3 level 1s that we just graduated. 10 people per cert. How intense of an example of a story do you want?
Use your own discretion, buddy. My audience and I can take it.
Grown
I
adults?
yeah, we're all adults in the room.
Okay, cool. And this guy is this dude's a gangster in the sense that he showed up. He had the financial or reasons not to do the cert, and he showed up. He heard about us through a friend. Showed up, uh, and so the cert starts. They're 9 weeks, 9 classes, and all the other stuff in there. We'll allow people in. Kim pulled a jack move on me. We'll allow people in. So the first class is the introductory class, and then the second class is actually class 1. That's when the thing kicks off, and we'll allow people to enroll up until that class 1 starts. So this is class 44 and class number 2. So we're introductory call in, class number 1 in. I show up for class number 2 and let everybody in, and there's a new guy in there. Kim didn't tell me anything about it. I was like, "Oh, hey, buddy, what's going on?" He's like, "Hi," and I just went with it.
Yeah.
Brought him up to speed real quick, what to do, um, and so yeah, he heard about us. Talked to Kim, and this dude had a story that was crippling him and had been for years. One of the morals of this story, everybody, that I'm about to tell you. Oh, and I say he's a gangster because he didn't know what he was getting into. He was just going on a hunch. And it based on the way his face looked on the other side of the cert and the way he sounded about just the sound of his voice was different. He's going in a different and better direction now. And Abe, he also said, yeah, go ahead and put my one-on-one session in Mighty Netflix. So you're actually did 2 with him. I did a follow-up session with him.
Oh,
That's
right
rare.
on.
That's about 1
Yeah.
in every 10 certs. And I
Yeah.
did it because of the intensity of it. So one of the morals of the story here, folks, is if you ever meet a woman in Las Vegas and her first name is Montana and she doesn't have a last name, okay, run.
Run.
This guy ran in the wrong direction. He ran straight towards it,
Like running into a brick wall.
like running into a pit of molten lava with spikes at the bottom.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Here it
And
comes.
yeah, here it comes. And in a not long after that, he finds himself shooting heroin. And he was successful in what he was doing in Vegas, and ended up stealing a bunch of money to support his habit. He got in trouble for that, and ended up calling his mom. She bailed him out, as in sent the X amount of dollars to the person that he stole it from, and then and said, please come home. 3 days later, after that, he finds himself in a bank writing rubber checks, because he needs his fix. And he gets busted, gets thrown in jail, goes through detox on a cement floor for a week. It sounded really fun. He got into
Oh,
detail about it.
yeah.
And then his brother came out and basically put a gun on him and said, get in the car, we're going home. So he did.
Mhm.
And then when he got home, to his mom's house, 1 month later, she accidentally pulls out in front of an 18-wheeler and gets flattened.
Jeez. One
And
thing after another.
broski, one thing after another. And guess where that guy kept those stories? That's another thing with therapy. It's tough. I'll just say it across the board. It's hard work helping someone get clarity with their story when the story is in their head. So one thing we're very big on, that's an understatement, is writing. Get the words out so you can look at the words, not so you have it in writing. Look, here's the words. I was wrong. Here's the proof. So you can look at the words, and then from there, unlock your breath. We might get into that later.
Mhm.
And so that's what this guy did. And we went and got those scary stories that had been in his head and on repeat for years. And it was had basically shut down his ability to have any goals for himself, any meaningful goals to move forward in his life. Um, and was just the guy was really hanging on by a thread for a long time. And people, that's the bad news. Where it's not the bad news, it's the is what it is news. People say, I can't keep living like this. No, you can keep living like that. You don't want to, but you
The
totally
proof is
can.
everywhere.
Yeah, the proof is everywhere. Oh, you've
Yeah.
been doing this thing that you're sick and tired of for the past 6 years. Guess what? You can do it for another six.
Hmm.
You could easily do that for another six. I didn't ask you if you wanted to do it for another six. I'm just saying that you can.
Hmm.
You can also change it too. So yeah, that comes to mind. And man, the stuff that came out of him, the emotions and feelings, um, and we got to a specific sentence. And the sentence was, because I asked him, what does it mean about him that he did all those things? He goes, it means that I'm a monster.
Hmm.
And that had been in there. Good luck waking up and thinking that every day, all day long.
Hmm.
And I took out monster and put in addict.
Hmm.
And that dude cracked like a nut. And because there's a difference between a monster and an addict. And and that right there gave him extra space and extra clarity. It took it sheared all it filed down a nice part of the horns of the victim mentality, or
Hmm.
the victim mentality that he was beating himself over the head with for God knows how long. Um, I mean, that's one story.
Let's the victim mentality. That's a good little reference. What is the victim mentality, Mark?
The victim mentality, everybody, is it's the thief in the night. It is um way more commonly used than any drug on the planet. Its addictive properties are way more hardcore than 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 any drug on the planet. And I mean that. I know what's happening with the fentanyl crawl and Kensington Street down in it's the victim that shit's got nothing on the carnage that the victim mentality induces. And by the way, guess what? Guess what most people guess what gets most people into those circumstances in the first place? The victim mentality, feeling
Yeah.
like they're not good enough, thinking that no one will ever really love them. I mean, that's the basis of most suicides.
Yeah, that's
Um,
a first order issue where the
yeah,
rest of it is
well said.
symptomologies.
Very
Yeah.
well said.
Yeah.
First order issue. First order issue. And it's so transmissible. A lot of times it's inherited because there are language patterns to the victim mentality, and we inherit our language from our parents or the people we grow and the people we grow up around. And most people are not thinking about their thinking. They're not contemplating on how
Hmm.
their words are influencing themselves and other people for better and for worse. So we get handed this storytelling mechanism with some glitches in it, and most people get addicted to the story that they tell themselves before they ever figure out, and most people never figure it out, um, what smacked them in the face in the first place. Because there's nothing more seductive than our own voice in our own mind.
Yeah.
Nothing. Nothing. So I'm going to recite the definition of the victim mentality twice, everybody. I recommend picking up a pen and writing it out because most people have never heard the definition of the victim mentality, much less written it down. So put yourself in a good and extraordinarily unique club by writing down the definition of the victim mentality. Here we go. This is slow. And then the second time I'll speed it up and add some polish to it. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. That's the verbatim definition. Here it is a little faster with some shine. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends, it's a tendency, everybody. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. A person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends, circle that word, on a habitual, underline that word, thought process and attributions. That second sentence is right between the eyes, right where it belongs. The victim mentality depends, as in it has to have a habitual, which accurately implies duration and addiction. Thought process. What's a thought process? Glad you asked. It's how you put your words together. Everybody has one. And then attributions. What's an attribution? It's a characteristic. And the main characteristic that we focus on, other than the words here at Enlifted, is breathing. The Enlifted, the victim mentality, it is stressful, and it's got more flavors than Baskin Robbins. It puts people in a stress state, traps their breath in their chest, and as we tell the coaches multiple times throughout all our certs, good luck changing your client's mind if their breath is trapped in their chest. You've got to loosen that thing up. Take out clients, put in your own. Good luck changing your own mind if your breath is trapped in your chest. Ain't gonna happen. So yeah, we focus on words and breathing here
Brings
at
up
Lifted.
another thought,
What's up?
and that is that how difficult is it to assist somebody else in therapy or in coaching or in
I
your
know where this is going.
relationship or in your work? How difficult how much more difficult is it to help somebody else when your own breath and story are trapped in your own head and you haven't done the work on yourself to clear that shit out so that you can have that space and clarity to allow a space for that other person to find it in themselves.
Somewhere between a shitload harder and impossible.
Yeah, no doubt.
Somewhere
Yeah.
between a shitload harder and impossible. Um, and what's likely going to happen is the coach, therapist, practitioner, psychologist, psychiatrist, they're going to drama and trauma bond with their clients. So drama bonding, what's a drama bond? And these are Enlifted definitions. So what we do, one of the things that we do at Enlifted is we take complicated shit and make it simple.
Mhm.
Okay. Like the definition of mindset. Go ask 5 people. It's a fun exercise. Go ask 5 people that are in the into mindset. Hey, what's mindset? You're going to get 5 different answers. Ask Google. You're going to get 17 different answers on the first page alone. Half of those answers, half of those definitions are long paragraphs and they're just way too complicated. Just someone didn't give it thought.
Mhm.
What they did is try to sound smart. And yeah, so a drama bond, that's when you believe your client's story. Sounds harsh at first, but I can elaborate. And then a trauma bond is when a practitioner and a client go into a stress response together. Breath trapped in the chest. Now you
Mhm.
got a mess. Oh, and by the way, all these things happen outside of coaching too. Drama bonding and trauma bonding happen all the time outside of coaching.
Yep.
It's fun to be able to not do that. It's
Oh,
fun
it's
to be able to just,
fantastic.
dude, it's the best.
Yeah. So in your life, having gone through a lot of different modalities and searching inwardly and finding clarity and space within yourself, non-verbally, how has that affected your relationships? You know, when you enter into a space to have that clarity and what's the observables in how it interacts with the world you move through?
Everything's way more smooth. Um, which is a metric of mine, a metric of success. So when I'm
Mhm.
presenting, if everything just runs smooth, if we're running an event, everything runs smooth. If we're running a cert, everything runs smooth. That means we've done the pre-work, we've done our homework, we're prepared, and we're delivering well.
Mhm.
Same thing. Let's just say go out on a first date. How smooth is it?
Right.
It's as smooth as you're breathing.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's as smooth as your breathing and as smooth as your words. And yeah, one of the things I did this weekend was get caught up on messaging all of our recent followers on Instagram. And I really enjoy the people I meet through this work. You've heard me say that many times, Abe, because it's true. You
Yeah.
meet most people do not want to think about their thinking, or are not, they haven't thought about thinking about their thinking. Especially the heavy work, go get those scary stories. Most people would pay not to do this work. So the people that are gravitated to this, I'm like, where do these people come from? Especially the people that take our certs. I'm like, who are you? And so anyway, I go in and I send a personal message to everybody that follows us, and as always, interesting conversations are sparked. And there's a woman, Joan. She's got a podcast. It's a single podcast though. She's got a good following on Instagram. She's a dating coach. And I'm going to do an IG live with her and talk about the dangers of the victim mentality in dating and relationships, because
Mhm.
that's very easy to do.
Huge.
It's very easy to do, and it's very common, very
Hmm.
easy to talk about what happens when you hold your breath on a first date. What happens when you, fellas, when you hold your breath in the bedroom? It's not gonna, it's not gonna,
It's going to end well, but not for her.
it, and, and, and it'll end quickly. That's the
Yeah.
thing. That's the thing. It'll end well and quickly for you. No, and nobody likes that shit.
Oh,
Not
and the
even the
victim
dudes.
mentality is inherently self-centered
Oh, dude, it's the
in the
most
worst sort
self-centered shit
of way.
in the worst sort of way. And there's so many ways that we could talk about this. And yeah, fellas, that's what that is. That's what short stroking is. That's you're holding your breath. Get your breath low and slow, jump in the sack and watch what happens. Okay. Um, yeah, the victim mentality, I've started saying this, I don't know, like 3, 4 months ago. And one of the coaches commented on how much they no, somebody was listening to one of our podcasts, and they stopped and laughed out loud. The victim mentality is the most fucked up multi-level marketing program, MLM, ever. It's like the worst. It wants everybody. And there's no end to its ability to suck the life out of somebody's life, and the air out of somebody's lungs, and the air out of the room. And a lot of times people get enlisted into that multi-level marketing. It was Dana Schmidt that said that
Yeah.
the MLM of the victim mentality through other people's words.
Hmm.
Okay. Also known as drama bonding.
What's a common victim mentality sentence?
Well, there's
Let's
branches of
unpack
it.
that. Yeah.
There's branches of it. So the language pattern or the thought process that the victim mentality has to have. I'm referencing the second sentence of the definition of the victim mentality.
Mhm.
Enlifted's term for that is called conflict language. And we were close. Actually, we were more than close. We threw our first course in the trash. So core language upgrade, which you've taken, that's
Yes.
the second shooting of it. The first shooting, we threw it away because we were calling it victim mentality language.
Hmm.
And we were right, or at least then. We could change our minds later, but it's called conflict language now. That was too strong of a place to start the conversation.
Hmm.
People are like, oh yeah, what do you mean victim language? I'm no victim. But then you talk about conflict, you're like, yeah, I got a little conflict going on at work, and you should see my marriage. So it's more relatable. It's more relatable. And in conflict language, there's four main pillars. So there's dramatics. Okay. never, always, ever, words that spike the drama in a certain way. There's soft talk. That's responsible for a vast majority of people's indecision and which is extremely stressful, by the way. Nobody likes prolonged bouts of indecision. Uh, uh, think, might, maybe, sort of, kind of, possibly, probably, hopefully, guess, one day, try. I'm going over here to get these. So are people going to be able to watch the video of this as well?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
All right. So soft talk. We printed thousands of these things.
I printed some up yesterday and handed them out to I did a
Dude.
workshop yesterday. It was, yeah, it was ballpark right out the ballpark.
Kick ass, dude. I got questions about that.
Oh yeah.
Probably. So if you're listening to this, everybody, pick up a pen, get a clean sheet of paper, and write these words out 5 times larger than you normally write. Why 5 times larger than you normally write? Because your mind is going to go, your reticular activating system is going to go, hey, why are we writing these words five times larger? And then some other party is going to go, doesn't matter, pay attention to them, which you will. And so take that clean sheet of paper and put it up somewhere where you're going to see it for 30 days. And that is plenty to train your awareness to start hearing these words and seeing these words. You'll see them first in texts and emails. You'll hear them in other people's language. And then finally, you'll hear it in yours. That's usually the order of operation once people get their head around this. So probably, perhaps, feels like, guess, maybe, could, might, possibly, sort of, kind of, potentially, hopefully, try, one day, should, almost like. So that's 16 words. And this is where you want to start, everybody. We got 2 other table legs of conflict language to talk about, but this is where you want to start because this is soft talk. I guarantee you it's in your language.
Everywhere.
1, it's everywhere. 2, it's very easy to take out. You just pluck out the maybe, pluck out the guess, pluck out the sort of, and you'll feel it immediately. So your language will solidify, your energy will solidify, you'll become more decisive. Most people have a black belt and they don't know how they're doing it. They just know they're doing it. They've got a black belt in talking themselves out of opportunity, talking themselves out of doing stuff. You want to learn how to talk yourself into stuff. And this is a very big part of it. And then also soft talk, people usually have the least emotional reaction or attachment to soft talk. And so you've got dramatics, you've got soft talk, you've got negations, can't, won't, isn't, not, shouldn't, haven't, hasn't, don't, which that's how people catastrophize. That's the word for it, catastrophizing, which is also known as, it's a fancy word for worrying or just playing out worst case scenarios. I can't keep living like this. There's a picture of me living like this. I don't want to get in a fight with her again. There's a picture of me getting in a fight with her again. I haven't got time for this. It's got a picture of me wasting my time. And those things add up. And then there's big time, dude. Yeah. And then there's projections. She needs to respect me more. When will they get out of my way? Does he actually think he can talk to me like that? And those 3 sentences in different ways created the victim villain mental imagery.
Oh yeah, that's a key thing to home in on. The victim needs a villain. It requires a villain.
It requires the sanction of a victim.
It will invent a villain.
Yes. And that if necessary, it will invent a villain. And that is spot on the last part of the first sentence of the definition of the victim mentality, even in the absence of clear evidence. And so what happens is, if you're using these language patterns, you'll walk into a scenario and turn people into villains where they weren't.
Yeah. All of a sudden you've got villains everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. And the more villains that you have, the more scenarios of you being a victim that you'll have. And one of the it's like a credit card with 82% interest on it, right? You'll enjoy that initial swipe. The bill's coming though.
Yeah.
As in those sentences, she's wasting my time. It absolves you from any responsibility about the time that you're wasting now thinking about her wasting your time. But guess
Mhm.
what?
Yeah.
That was your time. And very likely does someone think about something like that once. Very unlikely. Or also very unlikely does someone go, my dad always talks to me like a child. And then the next sentence is, man, there's so much opportunity out there. It doesn't go like that.
Yeah.
Right. That's why it's called a thought train for a reason. There's just
Yeah.
similar thoughts after. Yeah. And so it keeps going, and it absolves you from any responsibility. You know, she won't let me live my life. Okay. Well, now I've got a reason for all the reasons that I'm not doing shit with my time, my finite amount of time here on planet Earth, because she's the villain. She's the reason, not me. Hell no, it's not me.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by that initial swipe feels good. Wow, not my fault. But that check, that bill's coming.
Yeah.
And it's
Validation.
compounding interest.
Yeah. Validating your own bad behavior. It happens in subtle ways all over the place. It's an interesting study. I yeah.
It's a brutal study. It's hopeful. It's tremendously. It's the most hopeful. It's the best of news and the worst of news. I mean, what? Not yes. I'm creating my own reality. I'm creating my own story with my words. Fuck, I'm creating my own story with my own words. It's the same thing at the same time.
Mhm.
And there's a time when, if you keep staring at words and changing them around, and especially with the projections, because that's where the venom lies, everybody. That's where people's strongest attachment to their story lies. Eventually steam will come out of your ears when it dawns on you how much of these wounds are self-inflicted.
Yeah. And trapped in our heads. Getting them out on paper is a super useful tool, especially when you get the breath in there to create a little space and be able to observe, to think about your thinking. It's incredible. Well, it's totally credible.
Good one. Good one. Good one. Yeah, it's very it's incredible and credible. Uh and that's I know of no other. That's the best general way to do it, is to get the words out of your head, and not to let yourself believe them. The words hit paper and you're like, look, I got it in writing. Worst thing you can do. Well, maybe there's worse
Oh,
things.
leave it on the shelf.
Or just leave it on. Yeah, it's like you write it down and there's the proof. I was wronged. Got it in writing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh no,
You're
you want
making
to.
a contract with yourself
Yeah,
to
yeah,
perpetuate
yeah.
bullshit.
Good word. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You got your mental prison sentences on paper.
Literally giving yourself a sentence.
Yeah. You're sentencing yourself to.
And literally.
And literally. Yeah, that's one of those weird,
Yeah,
unique
isn't it?
places where you can actually use that word correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to get your words on paper so you can observe them instead of believe them. Those are two different things. And if you want to increase your powers of observation, you need to get your breath low and slow. So we combine that, writing and breathing. writing and breathing, words and breath. That's our bread and butter. We've done a very good
Mhm.
job at Enlifted. I'll give us a pat on the back about
I'll give you a pat on the back.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. That means a lot.
Yeah. So, I
You're a
mean,
work guy.
going into level 3 in lifted, did 1, did 2, going into level 3. I have studied the back end of why this works in some serious detail over a long period of time, from, you know, the is of identity through Korzybski and NLP and talk therapies and Jung and Freud and this and that, and this simplifying what seems so complex is a boiling down. It's an alchemy that takes some diligence, and to be able to present that to people in what we were talking about earlier in a practical way is straight up ninja shit, because getting to simple is pretty much the most difficult thing that we can have in this life, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Uh, I truly mean that. Um, and I know your back study and
Yeah.
your history and things like that. And you're right, dude. Taking something like this and getting it to simple is Einstein said it's not that I'm smarter than anyone else, because I'm damn sure not smarter than anybody else. Just he said I've spent more time with the problem.
Mhm.
And I can't say I've spent more time with the problem. What I can say is I've spent 18 years full time. I turned 18 years professionally January 17th in 2025. That's how long I've been doing this full time, staring at one thing, just one thing. And I didn't set out to simplify anything. What I did was make it understandable for me, because I'm a simple person. I was an elementary school PE teacher before I got involved in this line of work. I was an amateur MMA fighter before I got involved in this line of work. I do not have a, an intellectual pedigree. Okay. Um, and, so it's been me taking this, and then yes, Adam is one of the co-founders, but all the tech has come from my private practice. It's just me simplifying this stuff and talking about it in a very the most simple way possible. How can I talk about this in the most simple way possible? And it wasn't an angle that I took on purpose. I didn't say, okay, well, we're going to be the simple guys in the room. It's just that's a by like it's just it's really just authenticity. And I mean, I got the well, might as well go get it. Um Enlifted is very, very blue collar. It's blue collar mindset. We're proud of it. I come from an extremely blue collar background. And we can also talk about AK-47s and Enlifted, because
Oh,
that's
I'm game.
yeah.
I traded my AK-47 for a very nice microphone.
Oh, nice. Okay. What
Yeah.
kind of AK did you have?
It was, God, I don't even remember. It was solid, bare bones. Uh, leave it in the mud, pick it up, and
Fucking
still
old
be able
school.
to use it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the best, dude. Um, yeah. So my
and
nickname,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
well, and I decided to the pen is mightier than the sword in that sense, and so I traded that for a very nice microphone and put it to active use. I went into active duty, picking up my pen and using that to fine tune and put a sharp edge on the sword of my reason through my word. And so,
And then put it out.
yeah, and then put it out there. Yeah, which, story work, this Enlifted, I was relating this in my workshop last night, not to derail what you're getting into. We can
We'll
get
come
back
back
to
to it.
that.
I got my janitor's outfit in my hand.
Yeah,
There's no way
yeah,
I'll remember.
yeah. Yeah. Last night, even I was intending to start with right into a word game, and I did pull a Babe Ruth, and I switched the bat from one hand to the other, and I pointed to the fences, and I swung with the story of Harry Jerry and the Tall Poppy, which is on my channel for anybody who wants to read it. But I had given this poem to a gentleman that I had met on my way to my first peyote meeting, which is another thing I want to get into. And I recited this poem to him, and he said to me a really powerful spell. He said, "Boy, they're gonna kill you." Only two things I got to say to you: don't go to jail. Ain't nothing you can do for your people in jail. Two, don't get dead. This was a powerful spell. And from a place where he was intending for me to watch my P's and Q's so that I could continue that work. Now, in actuality, in landing in my psyche, it set up some serious roadblocks for me to put myself out there. Because at the time, I was on my way to making that a career. I mean, I was performing in front of, you know, crowds of anywhere from 100 to 3,000 people, and quite successfully, and moving a lot of energy around. That spell, which is a word or combination of words of great influence, as we know, and now you all know, landed in me in such a way where I retracted. I went, ooh, my breath went
Mm-hmm.
up here, and it
Mm-hmm.
became very difficult to get up in front of people and feel at ease moving that energy around, which meant that that energy wasn't moving around.
Mm-hmm.
And that petered off until I got that story of that relationship that I had built with myself through this one set of sentences. I had put my a sentence. I had judge, jury, executioner on myself with this story, and it landed, and it stayed, and it stuck, and where it landed and stayed was right in here, and I
Mm-hmm.
put it out on paper, and I stared at that shit, and then I crafted it, and then I processed it, and I integrated it. And so I think that's where a lot of the hang up is that people can acknowledge that they have this shit, and they can acknowledge it all day long,
Yeah.
and it's the integration of those things that allows us to really be with it. And there's so much bypass in our culture, trying to move around things and sidestep them and look at new ways to not have to look at that. And it was really powerful for me to really sit with it and look at how I had allowed somebody else's words to have that much impact on my trajectory, capacity, and outcomes in my life over time, over this habituated process that I made because of my relationship with me and how I took in those spells from somebody else. And now here I am. I am 47 years old. I was 21. Do the math. That's a long time to sit and wallow in bullshit unnecessarily because I lacked the wherewithal. You know, how great to have simple tools to really get in and move through these things and create and allow for a space of generative creativity to move into those uh, better potentiated capacities.
And to break the spells that we want to.
Yeah. And
Most people have
go.
no tool to do that.
Yeah.
You need a tool. You
Yeah.
absolutely need a tool and a know-how and know-to. Um, most people they're defenseless against other people's words, especially when they're young. And Enlifted helps people raise their psychological and emotional immunity towards things. Um, And most people never get the spells out and broken. So if you want to break a spell, everybody, it's the same way as you want to cast a spell. Write it down. If you got some stuff that somebody has said to you, maybe your dad said something to you and it hit like a brick to the face and it's been in there. It's if 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 it stung then and the words are still in your head now, I promise you it's influencing you.
Yeah, what good metric?
It's a bit,
What's your breath doing
yeah,
when you think about that story?
yeah, yeah, for sure. You could, and this
I'll
is
I'll
stuff
bet it shifts.
you can, yeah, you and what's great about this is that you don't need a PhD to have these conversations with yourself or to pick up a pen and write out the scary words. Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. A lot of times, those people, those well-intended people, um, make things worse because they make things more complicated. They make things complicated. We're acknowledging that yes, you have this social anxiety, and here's a label for it and a script of meds.
Mhm.
You know, um, so you asked for some stories at the beginning.
Mhm.
Here's two, and I haven't told these in a while. And since we're talking about spells and one-liners,
Mhm.
so a spell can go both ways, everybody. There are constrictive spells, words or combination of a word or a combination of words that constrict, contract, create dense, heavy energy, trap the breath, big, scary pictures, very close in the imagination, excess rigidity and tension in the body. And then there are expansive spells. Um, a word or a combination of words of great influence, of an expansive nature. So that it create light and bright, expansive energy,
Mhm.
relax the body, unlock the breath, make big, expansive pictures in the imagination. And I'm going to tell you a tale of two spells. These are both one-liners. One is a constrictive spell, and one is an expansive spell. This woman came in, it was a while ago, sat down. She was very self-aware. And she said, I'm struggling in my marriage. My husband thinks I'm attractive. I refuse to believe him. It's getting in the way of stuff. Oh, by the way, I know when it got set up. I just don't know what to do about it. And I said, tell me more. And she told the story of when she was 10 and they drive up to her parents' they drive up to her grandparents' house for Christmas. And she gets out of the car and walks into the house, and her great her great aunt is right there when she walks in the house, and she leans down and goes, hi, you have a big nose just like me. Thanks for that. That little
Yeah.
girl stiffened right up, ran into
Is
the
that
bathroom and looked in the mirror. What do you think the first thing she looked at was, Abe? Her
on the
nose.
nose, right on the nose?
Yep. Which was, of course, no bigger now than it was 10 seconds ago physically, but in her imagination, now it's huge. She's got a honker, which means she's ugly. And the reticular activating system goes, oh, okay, well, since you're ugly, I'm going to edit out I'm going to hyper focus on all the flaws, magnify them, make them worse in your imagination. And then all the redeeming qualities, I'm going to minimize those and and not allow you to see them or accept compliments from other people that are sincere, because I don't believe they're true, so I'm not going to believe that you believe that they're true. That's why a lot of people, we did this in level 2. That's why most people have a 3rd-degree black belt in diminishing other people's compliments, um, pats on the back. It's because they don't believe what the other person is saying is true, so they won't let them believe it either. They just dismiss it, minimize it, deflect it. So that's a constrictive spell. And we're on the same page with this, Abe. Rudolf Steiner. Rudolf Steiner said any force that seeks to constrict or control is by definition Luciferian. If you don't know who Rudolf Steiner is, look that guy up. I honestly, an unbelievable person. And so that spell was a force that constricted and controlled. It constricted and controlled her breathing and all the other stuff. It controlled her ability to enjoy intimacy with her husband. So by his definition, it's a Luciferian spell. And I can get on board with that.
And an observation real quick.
Sure.
Most people don't even know they're doing it.
Oh, no. No. Most people are not paying attention to the words that they use or how they're breathing when they're using words, making sounds out of their face, or the rate of speech, or any of those things. They're on the tail end of the crack of the whip of the outcome of them. They're being overrun by the feelings and the emotions of them. And so it's this negative feedback loop that gets set up. It's stressful. So the breath gets trapped in the chest, which makes the story go faster, which makes it bigger and scarier and then more believable. And then the breath is now higher and tighter in the chest. And then, good luck changing your mind when your breath is trapped in your, and so you've got this thing that goes on and on and on until someone blows a gasket or somehow, some way they change the story, change the faster the story goes, the harder it is to change. Everybody take that to the bank. And so changing some aspects of the story, things got to slow down if you want to change it. It's got to slow down. Fastest way to slow down a story is to write it down. And then from there, start changing words. The whole thing is not rocket science. It can be hard, the hardest thing someone's ever done. Okay. And it's not complicated in that sense. And then the tale of an expansive spell. So this is 2014. I gave a workshop. There was a guy setting up a booth right next to me. He heard everything. And he comes up afterwards. He goes, man, that was great. You want a story about what you're talking about? And I'm like, yeah, of course. And he goes, my grandfather took me out in the backyard when I was 12. And let's just say the guy's name was Dave. I don't know. Doesn't matter. And he said, his grandfather was talking. He said, Dave, little Davy, life is wild. There are ups and downs and twists and turns and zigs and zags. You're going to get things right. You're going to get things wrong. Just always remember to err on the side of being a badass motherfucker. And he said, my life changed in that moment. Grandpa dropped an F-bomb on him. And it felt like I got bigger because, again, energy expanded. And he said he looked up. Things are looking up. And he saw himself in his imagination as confident and competent. And he goes, man, I've made a ton of mistakes. Join the club. And he goes, and I go after what I want. And I enjoy being me. And I'm like, there it is right there. That's the point. That's called winning. That's the point of anyone that's ever picked up a book on self-help, anyone that's ever hired a coach for some help with anything. It's to enjoy themselves more and to go after what they want. Those two things, that's the point of healing. Okay, well, there's 2 points. One, forget you were ever hurt. Okay. And then 2, go after what you want and enjoy your life more.
Right. Yes, there's some work to be done to set up the foundation, obviously, for being able to step into that. And one of them that's come up a lot recently is people have a difficult time often knowing what their own version and defining for themselves what success means. you know, and getting at the root of what they actually want, how to formulate for themselves a clear
Yeah.
path into what they want. Which brings to mind a Nietzsche quote: "Give me a why, and I can conquer any how. Give me a why, and I can conquer any how." And one of the things that this work has really helped me with is giving me a really great why and getting at the root of why. Why do I want to dig into my stories? Because I want to have better relationships with my wife. Because my interactions at work are causing more controversy and conflict, and it makes me not want to be there. Because I mean, there's endless because it's a really clean way of getting at a really fundamental and clear why. And then the how shows itself. Does that ring?
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%.
And,
And
and so, yeah, go for it.
you know what you're saying about it takes time to articulate things, including what we want. And most people can tell you more easily what they don't want than what they want. I don't want to feel so insecure at work anymore. Okay, well, that's what you don't want. Yeah. What do you want? Well, I don't want to feel like a phony. I know that's what you don't want. What do you want? I just don't want to do it anymore. I believe you. What do you want? It's quite the exercise. What do you
It
want?
is.
What can you do? What is possible? What have you got access to? Who is in your corner? This is all. This is those seem very simple because in one sense they are. They take time to articulate because most people do not practice speaking in the affirmative. And I'm not talking about dorky ass affirmations like, gosh darn it, I'm good enough. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about using your words to affirm the reality that you want, or using your words to create and affirm the direction that you want to go in your imagination and your feelings. And again, it's just these are very, very basic and oftentimes not rarely done, never done things, people in their stories. And then from there, you mentioned it earlier, the victims require villains. Ayn Rand quote, you like this: evil requires the sanction of a villain.
Mm-hmm.
No, excuse me, evil requires the sanction of a victim. And so, and I try to think about like I guarantee that you've looked into, because I can't, if something is complicated, I can't read it. I'm serious. I will
Yeah.
not invest the time to sit there and figure the damn thing out if it's very high level and
Yeah.
sophisticated
So
and
you never
philosophical.
got into theosophy.
Fuck no. Fuck no. Tell them what theosophy is.
Theosophy comes out of the Western kind of collecting ancient wisdom traditions and developing a system of very mental activity to get into the higher mind and higher ascension language. And in that, a
Madam Blacksky.
Madame Blavatsky,
Thank you.
and let's bring in some others. Alice and Foster Bailey, who were the founders of
I have one of her books on
uh,
white magic.
yeah, well, the treatise on white magic, which
Mm-hmm.
I have read. And what I can say,
Couldn't read it.
so that you all don't have to go through the pain of it, is that it's comes out of an occult tradition, and that occulting is to hide things. It's to occlude, and to occlude means that they're making it obtuse so that you feel better about having gone through all this arduous work to get to this great golden seed that they are giving to you. And there's also in a sense, this great denial of embodiment, of the physicality, of the experience of this life. And if we don't need that, if God didn't want that for us as an exploration of our divine nature, why the fuck are we here? And so an encapsulation of all of that is that it's all this great mental masturbation, and the more you masturbate, the closer you will be to this great ecstatic expulsion of your, I don't know. I found it to be a complete and utter nonsense exercise in mental masturbation that led to a sort of nihilistic narcissism that is endemic in our culture and shows up in places like they founded the League of Nations, Allison Foster Bailey specifically. And the League of Nations is what later became the UN. And the UN, as anybody who's got any time on their hands can go read Agenda 2021, and they can read all of these other
The
things
War
that
Machine, folks.
that came out of that. Yeah, things like silent weapons for quiet wars, which look that up. You can really see it in action, how those things play out in the actuality of what it does when somebody denies the body and moves too fast through this experience, and keeps it fast. So there's so much there that it's almost too much to get into in this context. And for instance, their protege, their messiah, was a guy named Jaidu Krishnamurti, and they found him as a young child, brought him into the fold to teach him all the occult secrets. And they educated him at Oxford, and paid his way, and he was going to take on the mantle of great guru, this externalized font of ascension for humanity. And Jaidu was asked to give a speech to accept this mantle, and essentially he got up there and went, y'all are missing the point of all of these teachings. And it's really quite simple. Think for yourself. And he went off to Ojai, founded a you know a guidance school for young ones to learn how to think for themselves, how to integrate experience, how to be in it, and did some great work. I suggest reading or watching some Krishnamurti talks. It'll teach you a lot about um, that concept that Mark's constantly hammering home. Answers push, questions pull, and how to look within so that we can really get uh, get into formulating better questions, which leads to even deeper and better questions, so that we can self-derive evidence within ourselves for a relationship with the external world and how it unfolds, and our creative our creative input into life. It's there's so much there, Mark.
So much there.
Yeah.
Dude,
So
let's put this out into the ether.
yeah.
You know what would be fun? We've actually talked about this. It was over the summer or something. I was over on this coast. Y- Let's you and I plan on doing a workshop together
Love it.
at some point in time, and and really just round stuff out, because I have researched to the degree that I have the things you're referencing, and I don't, for whatever reason, if it's complicated, one, I don't understand it. I won't spend the time to connect the dots.
Mhm.
And the second reason I won't do it is because I don't retain the information.
Ah,
It's like I'm not I this is not an act, everybody. Like
yeah.
I was in special kids classes in
That doesn't mean a lot. And there I could
D
get into that too.
it there were reasons.
Well, we
for
can
me to be in
ascribe
there.
meaning. We can ascribe meaning to it for ourselves. Anyway, I didn't mean to derail you.
No, no, all good. And one of those reasons is that I'm a little slow on the uptake with stuff. It takes me longer to get my head around things, and it's turned into one of my superpowers.
Hmm.
Um, and so I'm very happy that I've was in special classes in elementary school and middle school, and it took me 5 years to get out of high school, and 5 years to get out of my undergrad, and 8 years to get my master's, which I could have done in two. Um, and yeah, so it's not an act, it's not a joke. It's I mean, shit. Like behind the scenes, I'm referred to as the janitor. That's what I think of. That's what I think of myself, and I like that because I don't want to be the most. I want to be the lowest level motherfucker in the room. I really do.
Humbling.
And yeah, and stay there. And I'm
Hmm.
going to do this one thing, talk about words and stories in the most simple way possible for a long time. Um, and they got me a janitor's outfit. Looks like I could
I
change
love
oil.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it's a full janitor's monkey suit, which I wore at the event in Austin in October. That was super fun. Um, and yeah, and just to keep on that whole simple line of thought, uh, I lead with the words.
Mhm.
Um, and I also appreciate the sword. Uh, I my it's not my platform of choice. It's the platform that I chose is the AK-47, and that's
Mhm.
what I do with a lot of my free time and disposable income is to train in that platform. I own 14 AKs, and the Enlifted is very similar to the AK-47 in the fact that it's extremely basic. The AK-47, the history of it is fascinating. It's extremely basic. It's extremely reliable. It's extremely durable. It performs the in any and all conditions. Um, and it's a conscript weapon.
And
You can
it's
take
it's accurate enough.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's accurate. Exactly. It's accurate enough. And I mean the 7.62 by 39 round. It's a multi-purpose round. I mean I've shot well not numerous but enough rounds through cars in trainings
Hmm.
side by side to 5.56s or 2.23s, which is the AR round, and it just works wonders on a car. Where a 2.23 is like it's a little more of a specific thing, whatever. It's a conscript weapon, as in you can take 100 people and in 30 minutes turn them into a fighting force. And there's a saying, um, once you've introduced an AK-47 into a culture, good luck getting it out. Good luck
Hmm.
getting them out. You're not going to get them out. Um, Same thing with Enlifted. Once people start thinking about thinking, good luck getting them to stop thinking about thinking. Once people start paying attention to soft talk, good luck not hearing soft talk. And so Enlifted is not for the brainiacs. It's not for the smarty pants people. It's not for the know-it-alls. It's not for the triple PhDs. It's blue collar shit. It's blue collar shit. And you've heard me say this before. So talking about the occult, which means to hide or hidden. I hate that shit. I hate smoke and mirrors shit. And when it comes to transformational wordsmithing, that's why I teach while I coach. So everybody knows what's going on and people leave with things. And and in a very real way. And this wasn't intended. So it's Enlifted's very blue collar. So we're also, circling back to that initial question that you asked me, what is Enlifted? It takes a while to talk about it in all the different ways. Enlifted, and we didn't, and this is as Taoist as you can get. We did not intend on Enlifted being a a Taoist-esque coaching system.
Mhm.
So Taoism, if you can talk about it, it's not the real Tao. If you intend to make it Taoist, it won't be, right? It was an unintentional thing. And so if you think, you know, we give by taking away. We're there to create space and clarity, not put any information in there. And how, the Taoists are kind of big on breathing and being in the flow. Okay, the flow, the grid, the heavenly flow, the Tao, and then we're known as the language people, and that's not even the point. The point is to help unlock people's breath.
Mhm.
So
In a sense, you and I are dipoles, as in your scholastic experience and mine similar in some ways. I was put in the special classes also, but for the gifted, and that has its own pitfalls of
mm-hmm.
this putting you into this I'm better than them for one, and that which doesn't hold any water when you really dig into it. And so my tendency is to get into the weeds on theosophy and on occult nature and alchemy and all these things. And my tendency is then to distill those and look at what's accurate for me in them. And I come to a similar place where strip away all the nonsense and the misleading aspects of it and distill it into utility for me, and then present it to others in a simplest form possible. And so we're coming at this fascinating and wonderful game of the word, which it all seems to come down to in how it is that we transact. Life is
Yeah.
largely about transaction, and that transaction is fundamentally built upon our word. So, what are those words doing? How do they interact? How do they exchange? Transaction implies this exchange, and that exchange is really a what a what a topic. And then there's the nonverbal aspect of that, which both you and I feel have dug into. And there's another Nietzsche quote that I'm going to lead into this with, and that is, "Be careful of wisdom you did not earn." So, psychedelic therapies and people's tendency to think of that exchange as wisdom, the plant medicines, and going into those spaces or in a festival environment. Oh, I blew open the universe and we described it all, and I'm going to go back to living that same pattern, the same outcomes, the same relationships by and large that I did before that, with this sense that I came away from that experience with something. Okay, so what are the fruits of your labors then? What did you come out of that with? Now, I'd really love some background on. You've mentioned a couple times in passing that you did ibogaine treatments. Are you willing to get into that?
Yeah, of course.
Tell me a little bit
Um,
about your experience with that and how that informed moving through that into playing with your words, and why.
so I lived in Thailand for 10 years. The first half, I was an elementary school PE teacher in Bangkok. The second half, I was a counselor coach at a cleansing resort on an island in the Gulf of Thailand called Koh Samui. It's at the spa. And I I I had had psychedelic experiences prior to that chapter in my life, most of which was just, taking a tab of acid and going to watch the Allman Brothers,
Mhm.
or washing down a handful of mushrooms with a 12 pack of Natural Light with buddies in college, and
Natty.
natty, natty. And I thought that whole thing was done. I was like, okay, cool enough, sure. And around my first year there, around August, the chiropractor, no, the hypnotherapist, Neil, he came up to me and he goes, "Hey man, it's August." And I go, "It is." And he goes, "We got something to do in the rainy season." I was like, "Okay." He goes, "I'll keep it a secret, and I'll message you when it's time." I was like, "Okay." And so rainy season is September, October, November down there. And about 3 weeks, 4 weeks in to the rainy season, Neil hits me up and he goes, "All right, meet me at the 7-Eleven, bring some trash bags." Yes.
There's a proposition for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And so we go to the um, elephant trekking farm where they take tourists on elephant treks in around these little loops and shit. And we park the bikes and then sneak into the jungle. And you know what elephants do? They poop a lot. And so they take all the elephant shit and throw it in the woods. And we came around the corner to where all the elephant shit was, and no lie, dude, it was about half the size. It was the size of half of a tennis court, blanketed in these huge cubensis mushrooms. I walked out of there with 10 pounds. We didn't pick damn near any of them. And so I was dating this woman, this Russian woman that could just cook her ass off. And so, we had mushroom chocolates and mushroom sauces and like tea. And I just started tripping a lot. And it got me thinking more about, um, and some pretty heavy doses too. There was this one, I went numerous times. This one time I went by myself, I came around into this clearing, and there was this one mushroom that was about that tall. The stem was that big around, and the cap had not opened up yet. It was the size of a racquetball. And I was like, holy shit. And I picked it and I went home and weighed it, and it was 50 grams.
Oh, geez.
And I made tea
That's an
with it.
order of magnitude beyond Terence McKenna's idea of a shamanic dose, by the way.
Yeah. And I made tea with that 50-gram mushroom. I mean, that was, you're getting a little up there with that shit. But yeah. And so that got me thinking about psychedelics more because I was taking them.
Mhm.
And it was different. It was different and mostly better. It's mostly better. So most of my trips are dark,
Mhm.
85, 90%. So much so that I just wrote it all off. Um, and currently I'm good. I don't, I'm good.
Likewise.
Yeah. And I was talking about this with Kim the other night because most of her trips are light and bright. I was like, hey, if that shit was like that for me, I'd be going in all the time, but it's just not. And I've done enough of it to where I'm like, okay, I'm not sure what the message is here. I don't need any. I just I don't need any downloads, zip files, universal message is I know what I'm going to do with my time here, professionally speaking. And if I was going to get on the other side of something, it would have happened by now. I'm pretty damn sure. So anyway, psychedelics, they're back in the conversation. And one of my best friends at the time, I had two there, Adam Chin, who's my business partner now, and a guy named Josh. Now, Josh, also known as Big Sexy, is the most dangerous fat guy in the world. 6'2", 330 pounds, head like a cinder block. He's a Danish super heavyweight Shotokan champion for numerous years. And at one point in time, he was lean and mean and 5 different black belts. And then this guy just was like, yeah, fuck all that. Sat on the couch, got huge, but could still kick Coke cans off your head frontwards and backwards with this huge gut. It didn't make any sense at all. And he had been administering Ibogaine for 10 years on and off. This is in 2008. And he finally helped me talk myself into doing Ibogaine, which we did in the most cowboy fashion ever. No test dose, if you're familiar with anything about Ibo, Abe.
Yeah.
No test dose, 2 grams of HCl at once down the pipe. Your ass is gone. And it's actually a little dangerous. Take out a little. I didn't know. He was like, I thought he knew. And that's how he learned. And
The
so on the
danger
other,
of trusting experts.
yeah, no shit. on the other side of that, the benefit for me, the whole thing was just dark as hell, but I didn't flinch. I stayed there and I didn't move. And so it helped me practice stillness in the eye of the storm. And so, and then something about it called to me. So 10 days later, I'm helping him assist on a treatment. And after 2 or 3 assists, he's like, hey man, you want to help me with this? Like, help me. And I'm like, yeah, I do. And so we co-founded Ibogaine Asia in early 2009. And for a year and a half, we ran a decent amount of treatments, 2 dudes. We administered, and I ended up taking, that same dose, a little bit different, because there's the bark, there's TA, and then there's HCl. But I took 3, not even heroic, almost stupid doses of Ibogaine in a pretty short amount of time, all within a year. We gave somewhere between 50 and 55 administrations in a year and a half period of time until I stepped out. Because I was like, you know what? I know less about this shit than I did when I started. And I was working the whole time with the words and stories. And one of the big gifts of that, there was a few big gifts. I mean, that's some crazy shit to do, by the way, is administer Ibogaine.
A lot of responsibility.
Fuck, bro. Too much. And within 10 sessions in of the 55 that I was 55 that I was a part of, I was like, hey, let's do some story work sessions with this people before and then after to address the stuff on a story level that they're signing up to do the Ibogaine about, because we were doing Ibogaine for personal growth, personal, emotional, and spiritual growth. I don't know what that means though. And I would field all the inquiries, and we turned out a lot of people that were looking for help with cocaine and alcohol and stuff like that.
Second order issues.
Yes, yes, second order issues, and which majorly complicates. Someone comes in with long-standing health issues from a meth habit. Uh, we neither of us were doctors, and so we decided not to do that. Was the most smart thing we did with the whole thing. Um, Along with getting people to do sessions with me prior to going in, and then also prior on the way out, so they had a story that they could integrate as opposed to this big amorphous what the fuck was that thing that you got to go home and hope you piece together over X amount of time. And so one of the gifts to me was I'm good enough with the words. I don't need to try to be special with any kind of plant medicine know it all people. And I'm not taking a shit on people in the plant. I'm just saying that I watched my ego get attached to the story of being a person that administered that stuff
Mm-hmm.
because it was hardcore. If you ask around everybody, I mean, most people that have any idea about it will say it's a special, if they have an experience, it's the most hardcore thing out there in psychedelics. It's not the fastest. Okay. DMT, 5-MeO, Bufo. That's, in my opinion, that is stuff that I know. That's the fastest rocket ship up and rocket ship down.
Mm-hmm.
This is a roller coaster down into hell that you're not coming out of for a very long time. 8 to 12 hours of rough work. If I'm remembering that's roughly that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and I watched my ego get attached to that, and I'm like, dude, you're dumb. Just go back to what you know, what you're good at, what you can continue to get good at. I'm like, do I want to do this for 10 years? No, I don't. Somebody could end up getting seriously hurt, which someone did
Mm-hmm.
on the island next to us. So we might have been the first people in Thailand to administer ibogaine. And then, some guys, it was about a year and a half after I got out of it, some guys on the island next to us, they started doing it too, and they took some current drug addict and put him through it, and that guy didn't live.
Mm-hmm.
They had to leave. And you know what? You know what I'm not worried about, bro? Somebody dying in an enlifted coaching session. Nobody's gonna fucking croak by me taking out
Yeah.
soft talk
Yeah.
or helping them four-step the story of being bullied in
No
middle school.
doubt. Yeah. And there's a couple things that are key takeaways for me is adding the integrative aspect to these
Huge.
things is huge. And that's what I mean about the Nietzsche quote I started this off with. Be careful of wisdom you did not earn. You have to earn it. And one of the ways you earn it is by moving through that. Another way you earn it is by taking that energy that is built through that process and making it yours, integrating it, and learning the tools of integration. And that is part of the role of a shaman is to help you in coming to a place where you're able to accept that information that's being provided and coming out the other side and integrating it into practical application in your life, outcomes,
Yeah.
reality. And I've done thousands. Yeah, I can accurately say I've done thousands of trips.
Jesus.
And I'm going to boil down for you in one sentence my takeaway of what that taught me that is was the most use. It gave me the ability to sit in the tumult of my own self with the sensation of falling, doing away with the need to grab a hold of anything. I think there's better inroads to that. We grab a hold of shitty stories, serves the same function. We grab a hold of the
Yeah.
story of how daddy didn't love me in the way I wanted him to. Okay, let's release that story and look at it, move it around, shift it. Daddy didn't love himself in the same way that I wanted him to. Daddy didn't love himself in the way he wanted him to. We can shift these energies by letting go of them, by not needing to attach to them. And you get to not needing to by becoming aware of it. And that awareness over time in building aptitude and attention. You can't attend something you're not aware of. And you can't become aware of something until you acknowledge it. But you can't move past the need to keep holding on to it until you work through it and let go of it. And if you keep grabbing on to these things in these great moments, moment being spin, and that could be the spin of the story you tell yourself or the spin of the stories that the world is telling you around you, it fucking rip your limbs off. I've had it happen. Took
I
me
would
a long
imagine
time
so.
to put my manipulative hands back on and learn how to manipulate in a way that's positive instead of trying to change everybody else around me.
Dude, thousands of trips, I would imagine so. Of Again, simple. I've told people that are like, "Hey man, should I do psychedelics?" I'm like, I don't. Like, do
You
you have the
can't.
pull? Do you have the pull? If you got the
Yeah,
pull, cool. If you don't have the pull,
yeah,
don't do it. It's that simple. And I go, and they go, "What's it like?" And I go, "It's a second opinion on reality."
yeah. Can
And you
be
know
very
what?
useful.
It could be very useful. You know what else is a second opinion on reality? Daddy didn't love me like the way I wanted him to, versus Daddy didn't love Daddy like the way I wanted him to.
Yeah,
Or Daddy didn't love Daddy like the way he wanted to. So what you just said, right? Like
yeah.
that's a second opinion on reality. And I've had some
Hmm.
people look like they got smacked with a heroic dose of mushrooms look on their
Yeah.
face in sessions when you play with the words
Likewise.
like that.
Yeah, likewise.
I got a request.
Yeah.
Can we do a follow-up show?
Oh, absolutely. That'd
Cool.
be a pleasure. And I think
We could
that,
we
yeah,
can do it in short succession. And
great.
one of the reasons why I asked is that I've always enjoyed our conversations, like I said the other day on the phone, since the
Yeah,
time we first spoke. And time flies. And second, I got another podcast in
great.
14 minutes and I would love to take a piss and have a bite
Yeah,
to eat
yeah,
beforehand.
I get it. I get it. Well, Mark, what a pleasure to have you here with us
Thank
all.
you, Abe.
And uh
No,
to
we can do part
oh,
two
I am
in a
totally down.
short
I
succession.
am absolutely down with that.
Post them back to back.
And workshop, I would that would be dope. And I have, like I mentioned on the phone the other day, have some things in the work that are savagely cool. I can't wait to share them with you and
Okay.
everybody else.
Okay.
And to all you watching, grace be upon you. Lots of love. And Mark, lots of love to you. Thanks for
Thanks. You
sharing
too, Abe. My
what
pleasure.
you've distilled for the world and for us as individuals coming stepping into this. Might be novel territory for many of those listening. And check it out. We'll post some links in the show notes. And Mark's pretty face right there next to the podcast feed. And I think that's out.
Thanks, buddy.